For 4 weeks now, we have been dreaming, and the night has finally arrived. The dreamiest night of the entire year, Christmas Eve. Teetering on the cusp of the good that is to come, Christmas Eve is made for dreamers. In the glow of candlelight, it always feels like we are just a little closer to the mystery tonight. I mean, we actually get to hold the light in our hand. We are handed candles. Even in this year, when we are lighting our candles from home, it feels as if tonight we might just be drawing as close as possible to the light of the world. I remember that feeling of being entrusted with fire for the very first time, and it was in church. And it was Christmas Eve. I remember being very, very careful, my eyes fixed on the dancing of the flame. I don't know what was more magical, the flickering of the candle, or the thought that my parents had encouraged me to play with fire. I love the magic of Christmas Eve service. I love the candles and the carols. I love hearing the dear old story read aloud again. Luke's story is actually quite a shocking story that has come to feel pretty cozy for us as it mingles in our minds with Christmas Eve candles and readings interspersed with beloved carols. And while I love the coziness of Christmas Eve, I also don't want to miss the story. Luke tells of a poor, unwed young mother birthing God into a hurting world, desperate for hope. The weary couple was traveling for the census at the demand of the empire that all the world be counted. And for all intents and purposes in this context, the empire was the entire world, and Emperor Augustus was in total authority over all of it. So even though the distance was difficult and dangerous, the couple made their way to Bethlehem, which incredibly placed them in the very location foretold by the prophets. Do you notice how God even uses the strong arm of the empire for God's subversive plan? There's more of that blessing of reversal that we've been noticing in Luke. The empire has, of course, established the Pax Romana, the Roman Empire version of peace, which was maintained through violence, intimidation, and complete domination. And into this, Luke tells of the arrival of the Prince of Peace, a baby, quietly and vulnerably signaling the ushering in of God's kingdom. It is so beautiful and creative how Luke tweaks the details in the empire's braggadocious story, transforming it into a story of the coming of a new kind of kingdom, a better one with no end. The kingdom of which Mary sang, in which the arrogant are scattered, the powerful are pulled down from their thrones, while the lowly are lifted up and the hungry are fed. This Advent, I was introduced to the Huron Carol and the story of its origins in Kate Bowler's Advent devotional. Jean Brebeuf was born in France in the late 1500s, and he became part of a priestly order that was called the Society of Jesus. Now, this was an order of priests that would travel to faraway places to share the good news of Jesus. And what they were particularly known for was that they were incredibly careful students of the people to whom they were sent to share their faith. When Brebeuf was a young priest, he was sent to the Great Lakes area to work among the Huron people. When he arrived, he, of course, set about right away studying and learning all that he could about the Huron people. He learned their language, and he even wrote a dictionary so that the people that would come later could know and understand and know all about this incredible tribe of people that he had come to love. Brebeuf shared the story of Jesus with his Huron friends. And to do so, he wrote songs about when Jesus was born. And in his songs, he reimagined the story as if Jesus was born as a little Huron baby. The carols he wrote are still sung in Canada, and Kate Bowler shared this about her favorite one, called the Huron Carol. It has all these lovely details, like instead of shepherds, it is the wandering hunters who heard the angels, sent by the Great Spirit to sing over the baby king wrapped in a robe of rabbit skin. And instead of 3 wise men, there were traveling elders who knelt before him bringing their gifts, not gold, frankincense, and myrrh, but fur, beaver pelt, and sunflower oil. I just love how Brebeuf reimagined the story details to help his new friends to understand their story within the arc of God's story. And this reminded me of the Church of the Annunciation. John and I traveled to Israel a few years ago, and one of the places we visited was Nazareth, the Church of the Annunciation. Now, this church is built over a cave that is legend to be the cave that Mary called home, the cave to which the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary with the good news that she was going to be the mother of Jesus. Now, we saw so many beautiful churches during our time in Israel, built in many notable places, and they were each memorable in their own ways. But what stands out for me about the Church of the Annunciation is the artwork that adorns the walls of the sanctuary and all throughout the courtyard. Beautiful mosaics of Mary and child, a fitting subject for the Annunciation. What is striking, though, is that the artwork doesn't present Mary in one singular way. This artwork has been gifted by many different people from all across the globe. Mary and Jesus in the artwork from China look Chinese. Mary and Jesus from Thailand are envisioned in traditional Thai attire. There is artwork from Spain, Vietnam, the Philippines, Ethiopia, France, Italy, Greece, South Africa, so many different places. There are so many pieces of art. I tried to photograph as many as I could as we rushed through the church on our tour, because I wanted to remember Mary and Jesus in this beautiful diversity. The story of Mary and Jesus was imagined by artists from across the globe, and the details and symbolism in each of the different mosaics tells the story of a God who comes to each of us in our own particularity. I wish I could have read all of the words and had time to decipher the imagery in each mosaic. I found the one from Poland very striking, as it reads, "In gratitude from thousands of Polish children delivered from Russian slavery and Nazi oppression. In the Holy Land and the free world they found home, education, and guidance provided by the Polish government in exile and its army." In this mosaic, it looks as though Mary is crying as she holds open the shelter of her robe. Young people, presumably the saved children, are set free. Luke reimagined the powerful stories of empire but for a new Prince of Peace to proclaim the coming of a new kingdom, taking the narratives of control and superiority and empirical glory and flipping them on their heads. To announce the emperor whenever he would go anywhere, there would be fanfare that often included an elaborate choir singing his praises. The choir was hired and paid for by the empire. But for Jesus, a heavenly choir of angels does the announcing, heaping honor onto the newborn child without being paid or coerced, instead sent from heaven to bestow glory and to share good news for all the people. Augustus demanded all the world to be counted, and the angels brought good news of great joy for all the people. These story themes would have been recognizable to the first century context of the Roman Empire. And Luke's story is a revolutionary reversal for a community of people who were suffering under the oppressive Roman Empire. The kind of empire that watched people tortured and executed for sport in the arena. And that wasn't even the worst of it. Luke takes the empire's stories of glory and power and makes them look like peanuts in relation to the true glory and the different kind of holy power that is found in the story of the humble birth of a child in Bethlehem. For the last couple of Sundays, we've been exploring the ways that Mary saw her story framed within God's larger story of liberation, redemption, and restoration. And the artwork at the Church of the Annunciation, we can say that that tradition lives on. The particularity of each unique context imagined from within Mary and Jesus' story. Much like Brebeuf imagined the story of Jesus in the Huron Carol. In her devotional, Kate Bowler wrote, "For Brebeuf, Jesus didn't have swaddling clothes. He's a little papoose, a baby in one of those little leather backpacks that Indigenous moms would wrap their babies in." Brebeuf looked around and wondered, what if everything that is holy isn't somewhere else? What if it is right here? What if these are the things that God would use if God showed up and needed a blanket? This sounds like the Christmas story. This is incarnation, the story of Emmanuel, God with us. Not God out there somewhere, but God with us in whatever context we find ourselves. God is with us, not only with the Caesars of the world, even and especially with the humble family, welcoming a holy baby into the world wrapped in bands of cloth and lying in a manger because there was no place for them in the inn. The beauty of incarnation is that it reminds us that God comes to us in the particularity of our own stories. As Paula Darcy has said, God comes to you disguised as your life. I like to believe that we live in a Christ-soaked world. What if everything that is holy isn't somewhere else? What if it actually is right here? Not exclusively, of course, but right here and everywhere else in God's Christ-soaked creation. Tonight, we bring our individual memories, details, stories, and dreams. May our candles illuminate for us our stories within God's story, within God's dream for this Christ-soaked creation. Tonight, may we be those who dream.